have been through losing someone you care about. Maggie, be careful, your claws are showing. Elizabeth Taylor was more than just a star. She was a princess of Hollywood. She was one of the most talked about people in entertainment history because of her violet eyes, famous movie parts, and scandalous personal life. Her life was much more complicated than it seemed, though. People have been whispering and speculating about her for years. Leads people to believe that there was more going on than they were told. New information about the famous actress shows a different side of her. Birth and early life. Elizabeth Taylor was born on February 27, 1932, in a lovely house at 8 Wildwood Road in the North London area of Hampstead Garden. Frances and Sarah Taylor were both born in Kansas, but they moved to London in 1929 to open an art store. Elizabeth had an older brother named Howard. They lived in style with famous people like artists, politicians, and writers. Colonel Victor Castellet, a close family friend, was very important in her early life and was even her honorary godfather. Within Highgate, she went to a Montessori school, was raised in the Christian Science views that both her mother and Cazalet held. But everything changed in 1939 when the family got ready for war because of the unrest in Europe. Washington, D.C. To return to America, Ambassador Joseph Kennedy told them. Sarah took the SS to bring back Elizabeth and Howard first. Frances stayed behind to close the London Gallery and would join them later that year after they moved from Manhattan to California. The family moved to Beverly Hills in the end. In California, Elizabeth's looks were striking, especially her deep violet blue eyes and thick eyebrows. A lot of people, even strangers, told her mom that Elizabeth was cut out to be in movies. Her mother didn't believe it at first, but since the war made it impossible for them to go back to England and Frances's art studio was getting attention from the Hollywood elite, she gave in. Ethel signed her first movie deal with Universal Pictures in 1941 when she was only 9 years old. In 1942, she had a small part in There's One Born Every Minute, but the studio didn't like her and fired her after a year. One casting director told her she didn't have anything and that her eyes looked too old. What happened next was not the end of her story. After that, she tried out for Lassie Come Home with MGM in 1942 with the help of a family friend. In 1943, she got a small part and soon after signed a 7-year deal with the company. Eventually, she got her big break. She played the part of a girl who wants to compete in a horse race for boys in the 1944 movie National Velvet, when she was only 12 years old. She was a hit, and Elizabeth went from being a child actress to a star quickly. MGM had big plans for her. She had to wear braces, have baby teeth taken out, and they even tried to change her name, which she and her parents didn't like. She worked from dawn until dusk, going to school, shooting, dance practice, and photo shoots. She barely had time to be a kid. They were already making her look like a beautiful young woman in public when she was 15. This set the stage for her becoming a superstar as an adult. In 1951, her role in A Place in the Sun finally showed that she was more than just a pretty face. She had talent. All critics agreed that Elizabeth Taylor had a lot of emotional depth, and from then on, she was Hollywood royalty. What went wrong with Elizabeth Taylor's career? At the beginning of the 1950s, Elizabeth Taylor's personal life began to get as much attention as her acting. She married hotel heir Conrad Nicky Hilton Jr. when she was 18. MGM planned a big, fancy wedding for them. The studio used the union as a PR coup to get father of the bride, 1950, more attention. But the marriage deteriorated very quickly. Taylor realized she was wrong after a few months. Hilton is said to have had issues with drinking and was rude. Within 8 months, she filed for divorce, which was risky for a young, famous woman at the time. The consequences were very bad. The public had been sold the marriage as a fairy tale, which made her choice even more confusing to fans and tabloids. Alexander Walker, a historian, says that MGM wasn't happy about it either. In response, the studio put Taylor in the 1952 love comedy Love is Better Than Ever as their punishment. A low-budget Hollywood movie. That was a clear message. If she left the studio's control, even for a moment, bad things would happen. After finishing the painting, Taylor was sent to Britain to be in Ivanhoe, 1952, one of MGM's most expensive movies. The experience didn't make her happy. She thought the story was boring, and she thought her part as Rebecca was not very important. Even so, the movie was a big hit at the box office, making $11 million around the world. It was a win for the company, but not for Taylor. Even though Taylor was unhappy with MGM, she signed a new 7-year deal in 1952. The reason was simple: they needed the money. She was married to the British star Michael Wilding at that point, and they were about to have their first child together. For Taylor, MGM offered a salary of $4,700 per week, which is about $55,000 today, a house loan, and an acting contract for Wilding that would last for 3 years. However, this meant that MGM had even more power over her. Rhapsody and Elephant Walk, her first 2 movies under the New Deal, came out 10 days apart in early 1954. She played a woman who was torn between 2 artists in the movie Rhapsody. Her part in Elephant Walk was that of a British woman, getting used to life on a tea farm in Ceylon, which she took over when Vivien Leigh got sick. In late summer, she was in Beau Brummel, which was another historical thriller she didn't like. She said, "I gave one of the worst performances of my career." But she got better with The Last Time I Saw Paris, a movie that spoke to her. "I decided I wanted to be an actor after hearing her talk about it, instead of yawning my way through parts." Her weight gain scandal. By the late 1960s, Elizabeth Taylor's looks, previously heralded worldwide, were starting to draw a different sort of attention. Now, in her late 30s, she had gained significant weight, and the transformation did not escape the notice of the industry or the media. During a time when Hollywood was trending toward a leaner, more natural look, as popularized by stars Jane Fonda and Julie Christie, Taylor's curvy figure became a signpost the media employed to signal her fall from grace. The transformation was cruel. The same tabloids that had previously worshipped her gorgeous violet eyes and flawless hourglass figure now fixated on her up and down body. Photos of her in bikinis or gowns were no longer admired, but criticized and dissected. Her face and appearance changed, but instead of embracing her growth as a woman growing older under the public eye, the media became nasty. Taylor, despite all her giftedness, was now frequently defined by her weight. Headlines that previously eulogized her loveliness now analyzed her physique with brutal honesty. Her career roles were thinner on the ground, not due to a lack of ability. She was still as forceful and insightful on camera as ever, but because she no longer fit the studio's strict definitions of womanhood. The weight gain was insignificant concerning the vast amounts of talent she still had. But the late 60s in Hollywood had no patience or tolerance for imperfection, particularly in females. Taylor's changing figure became a convenient metaphor for an acting career that critics argued was on the skids, despite most of the criticism being based not on her performances, but on her appearance. It was a tough lesson on how fame, and particularly for women in the spotlight, is too frequently connected to youth and thinness. Her marriages, relationships, and children. Elizabeth Taylor's own life was as melodramatic as her movies, perhaps more so. She married 8 times. She married 2 of those times to the same man, and each of her relationships was tabloid fodder. As her biographer Alexander Walker put it once, whether she liked it or not, marriage is the matrix of the myth that began surrounding Elizabeth Taylor from when she was 16. Even as a teenager, Hollywood had big plans for her. MGM, the studio she worked with, set her up with football star Glenn Davis. She even planned to marry him after he returned from Korea. Later, she got engaged to William Pauly Jr., and film mogul Howard Hughes once tried to buy her hand in marriage with a 6-figure offer to her parents. She turned him down. Elizabeth felt that a young marriage was the right thing to do. She was bred to believe that love and marriage were synonymous. In retrospect, she conceded she was emotionally immature and expected marriage to free her from MGM and her parents. She married hotel heiress Conrad Nicky Hilton Jr. when she was 18. Taylor suffered a miscarriage during one of his abusive outbursts. They broke up after 8 months. Her second union with British actor Michael Wilding was calmer. He was 20 years her senior and provided her with the stability she was seeking then. They had 2 sons, but his flagging career and the age gap tested them. They broke up in 5 years. She wed producer Mike Todd next and gave birth to a daughter with him. The relationship was charged with energy and publicity stunts. Sadly, Todd was killed in a plane crash a year later. Devastated, Taylor turned to singer Eddie Fisher, who was then married to actress Debbie Reynolds. Their affair became a massive scandal. Taylor was accused of being a homewrecker, but she wed Medica Fisher nevertheless, although she later explained that it was due to bereavement. During the shooting of Cleopatra in Italy, Taylor started an intense and tie-in in alcohol and ultimately divorced him as well. Taylor married for the final time in the 1990s to construction worker Larry Fortensky, with whom she had met at rehab. They got married at Michael Jackson's Neverland Ranch, licensing the wedding photos for $1 million to benefit her AIDS Foundation. They divorced in 1996, but remained on good terms for life. In her last years, Taylor shared a deep platonic friendship with actor Colin Farrell. They talked on the phone frequently, largely to discuss how they were surviving insomnia. Her religious beliefs. Elizabeth Taylor wasn't only famous for her looks, acting skills, and sensationalized relationships. She also made some personal and daring decisions that differentiated her from others in Hollywood. One of them was her embrace of Judaism back in 1959. Even though two of her spouses, Mike Todd and Eddie Fisher, were Jewish, Taylor insisted that her conversion was unrelated to them. She reported having wished to convert for a long time and discovering comfort and dignity and hope in Judaism. "I feel as if I have been a Jew all my life." She is quoted as saying at one time, her godfather, Victor Kosselet, and her mother, who were both ardent supporters of Zionism, probably had something to do with her early interest in the Jewish religion. Though after her conversion, Elizabeth didn't merely quietly observe her new faith. She became extremely busy promoting Jewish and Zionist causes. In 1959, she purchased $100,000 in Israeli bonds, an act which forthwith engendered resentment. Numerous Arab nations of the Middle East and of Africa blacklisted her films in response. She was even forbidden from going into Egypt to film Cleopatra in 1962. 2 years later, they reversed that decision when officials saw that the film provided Egypt with good publicity. Taylor wasn't hesitant to take a stand for what she knew was right. She raised money for the Jewish National Fund, served on the board of the Simon Wiesenthal Center, and worked for Soviet Jews' right to immigrate to Israel. She even postponed a visit to the USSR to protest the anti-Israel attitude of the country during the Six-Day War. One of her strongest acts was in 1976, when Israeli civilians were being held hostage during a hijacking at Entebbe. Taylor herself volunteered to be a substitute hostage, a profoundly personal act of courage and solidarity. She next appeared in a movie about the affair, Victory at Entebbe, and narrated the Holocaust documentary, Genocide, which received an Academy Award. Elizabeth Taylor's religion was never just about her. It was intentional. She lived it with fearlessness and conviction. She was Hollywood's ultimate fashion and jewelry icon. Elizabeth Taylor was not only a film legend, she was an actual fashion icon, period, both on and off the red carpet. From her formative years at MGM Studios, she was attired by a few of the best costume designers of the era, such as Helen Rose and Edith Head. As she transitioned into the 1960s, her gorgeous looks were regularly styled by Irene Sharaff. Yet another Hollywood fashion titleist, some of her most iconic movie looks became legendary in their own right. Who can forget the stately white ball gown in A Place in the Sun, 1951, or that time-honored Grecian frock and cat on a hot tin roof, 1958? She also sported a dramatic green A-line dress in Suddenly Last Summer, 1959, and in Butterfield 8, 1960. She turned a plain slip and fur coat into a fashion statement. And who would ever forget her dramatic Cleopatra appearance in 1963? That movie made more than headlines. It started the trend of cat-eye makeup with bold black eyeliner. But it wasn't only her wardrobe that made Elizabeth iconic. She had a lifelong passion for jewelry, and her collection was legendary. Her marriage to Richard Burton notoriously presented her with some of the most stunning jewels ever seen. The 33-carat Krupp diamond, the 69-carat Taylor Burton diamond, and the La Peregrina pearl. They were not mere accessories, more like symbols of the romance whirlwind. As if that was not enough, Taylor adored her jewels so much so that she even penned a book about them titled My Love Affair with Jewelry in 2002. She also helped make designers such as Valentino and Halston household names. In 1997, she was awarded the Lifetime of Glamour Award by the Council of Fashion Designers of America, CRFDA, in recognition of her ageless sense of fashion. Following her death, her jewelry and wardrobe were sold by Christie's to fund her AIDS organization, ETF. Her jewelry alone sold for an astonishing $156.8 million, and her clothes and accessories generated another $5.5 million, showing that Elizabeth Taylor's glamour never goes out of style. Friendships in high places. Elizabeth Taylor was more than a film actress. She was a person who traveled in the uppermost realms of fame, friendship, and power. Her entourage had included world icons such as Michael Jackson, Princess Diana, and Elton John. Her friendship with Michael Jackson, especially, was one of Hollywood's most gossiped about. They first met in the early 1980s and soon became inseparable. Taylor once said their connection was the purest, most giving love I've ever known, while Jackson described her as like a mother, sister, and best friend all in one. They shared private moments, deep emotional conversations, and defended each other fiercely during their darkest times. She also reportedly shared a warm friendship with Princess Diana. Although few saw them personally together outside, they were both celebrities in their own right, tough, beautiful, and under constant surveillance. Their shared appreciation of philanthropy work and their ambivalent feelings toward fame united them in silent solidarity. Elton John was another close friend. He frequently publicized her activism, especially her unbowed campaign against AIDS at a time when many celebrities were mum. In return, Taylor offered his AIDS Foundation backing and held his hand through his woes. Aside from these celebrity friendships, rumors of Taylor's connections with political influence, as well as clandestine protection, have long existed. Rumors included that she had personal acquaintances within the CIA or White House insiders. Although these rumors were never substantiated, individuals speculated that Taylor's ability to avoid some of the more scathing media criticism, despite her very publicized scandals, suggested strong behind-the-scenes powers maintaining her image undiminished. Her illness and death. Elizabeth Taylor might have had a glamorous existence on screen, but off-screen, she fought with serious illnesses for all but a handful of years of her life. She was born with scoliosis, a curvature of the spine, and while shooting National Velvet in 1944, she injured her back, an injury that went unnoticed for years but tortured her with pain for decades. In 1956, she underwent surgery to have several of her spinal discs replaced with donated bone. She was also not out of trouble with her back. In 1961, pneumonia had brought her to the brink of death, so severe that she underwent an emergency tracheotomy. Her throat had a huge tube inserted in it to allow her to breathe. She also underwent numerous surgeries throughout the years, including a 1968 hysterectomy that exacerbated the pain in her back and hips. To deal with her ongoing physical distress, Taylor consumed alcohol and prescription medication, which resulted in addiction. Taylor was courageous enough to be the first high-profile celebrity to publicly admit herself into the Betty Ford Center, where she remained for 7 weeks. From late 1983 well into early 1984. Although she did have a relapse later in the decade, she went back for treatment a second time in 1988. After her marriage to Senator John Warner in the 1970s, Taylor put on a great deal of weight and was severely criticized for it in the press. She retaliated by writing a 1988 book entitled Elizabeth Takes Off, recounting her troubles with weight gain and self-esteem. She also smoked quite heavily for the majority of her life until a second severe bout of pneumonia in 1990 compelled her to give up, although accounts indicate that she took up menthol cigarettes once more by 1995. During her later life, Taylor's health worsened further. She underwent 2 hip replacement operations, underwent treatment for skin cancer, and underwent surgery for a benign brain tumor in 1997. By the early 2000s, she was dependent on a wheelchair and was diagnosed with congestive heart failure in 2004. Elizabeth Taylor passed away from heart failure on March 23, 2011, at the age of 79, at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles. Her funeral was held the next day at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale. True to her flair and humor, Taylor had one last wish for the ceremony to start 15 minutes late. As her representative explained, she even wanted to be late for her own funeral. She was buried in the Great Mausoleum, having left behind a legacy not only of beauty and celebrity, but of unimaginable resilience through suffering. The solved mystery Hollywood's golden era may appear glamorous on the screen, but behind the velvet drapes, it was anything but pretty, particularly at MGM. Well before Harvey Weinstein's name became synonymous with evil, studio moguls held their stars in their greedy palms. Women performers, especially young ones, were frequently at the mercy of these moguls, professionally, physically, and emotionally. Consider Judy Garland's case. As detailed by The Guardian, she was signed to MGM at the age of 13 and came up under close observation, subjected to inappropriate advances and predatory behavior by studio moguls, including Louis B. Mayer himself. Garland has spoken of being called a fat little pig and put on draconian diets, occasionally given chicken soup and black coffee instead of a meal. On shooting days, she was given pep pills to keep her on her feet and then sedated so that filming could continue the following day, usually on a cold floor. This was all part of a larger factory mentality at studios such as MGM, complete with in-house police, staff escort, and enforced image regulation. Mayer treated his stars like children and employees, requiring compliance in every aspect of their lives. Women were frequently required to barter personal boundaries for roles. There were widespread reports of studio parties involving hired escorts and deeply inappropriate conduct. Elizabeth Taylor, who came to MGM as a teen, knew this pressure firsthand. Although in public, she seldom spoke the full measure. In a 2004 interview, she confided she felt horribly manipulated as a young actress under the studio system. Although she didn't mention names, the remark suggests something profoundly uncomfortable. Taylor once shared that she lived in fear of a certain powerful figure from her early years, though she never named him publicly, suggesting there was more to that early Hollywood experience than we're told. We do know MGM suppressed scandals aggressively. Patricia Douglas, an MGM event dancer in 1937, claimed to have been assaulted by a studio employee, allegations that were reportedly suppressed by MGM. This structure granted executives disproportionate power and probably encouraged them to act with impunity. No wonder so many stars kept quiet. MGM's culture made ambition a weakness. Young actors became watched-over properties and tools shaped to fit fantasies and markets. Elizabeth Taylor survived, but too many others did not. What happened behind the scenes in old Hollywood is a reminder that even the biggest stars were not always in control of their own lives. For someone like Elizabeth Taylor, who seemed to have it all, beauty, fame, and success, the reality was often far more complicated. She entered the industry as a child and was quickly thrown into a world where power was concentrated in the hands of a few men. Decisions were made for her, and expectations were placed on her shoulders long before she had the chance to fully understand them. But Taylor's story isn't just one of pain or pressure. It's also a story of strength. She may have been manipulated by the studio system early on, but over time she learned how to push back. She reinvented herself time and again took control of her own narrative and eventually became a powerful voice in her own right. Not just in Hollywood, but in the world of activism, fashion, and philanthropy. We must remember stories like hers not just for the gossip or glamour, but for what they teach us about how power works. The studio system may be gone, but the patterns of control and silence it encouraged still exist in many industries today. By looking back honestly, we can begin to understand the cost of that silence and the importance of giving people, especially young women, the space to speak up and be heard. Elizabeth Taylor will always be remembered as a legend, but behind the diamonds and red carpets was a woman who fought to be seen, heard, and respected on her own terms. Her life reminds us that even in the brightest spotlight, there can be shadows, and that telling the truth about those shadows is part of honoring the legacy of someone who lived through them. If you found this story moving or eye-opening, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more untold stories from Hollywood's golden age. We get deep into the lives behind the legends, what the cameras didn't show, and the truths that shaped icons like Elizabeth Taylor. Hit the bell icon so you never miss a new upload. And let us know in the comments what story you'd like to explore next. Thanks for watching.